the month of May, I read 7 different books, and we are going to tell you all about them. Oh, dude. My cat's trying to knock down my whole setup here. Give me a second. Dude! As I was saying, I read 7 books in the month of May. The first month of May was my finals for college, so I did not get any reading done the first week. But then after finals was done, I got to move out of New York. I moved back home, and then I could finally get back into reading, and I'm so glad that I was able to because I read some really good books this month. I read a couple 1-stars, but I also found 2 different 5-star books, and I'm going to tell you guys all about them. First book I read this month I got from a blind date with a book type thing. I ordered it off of the TikTok shop. I really think that if I didn't order a blind date with a book, I never would have picked this book up, and that is More Than Words by Mia Sheridan. Mia Sheridan is an author that I've been wanting to read for a while because she read Archer's Voice, which was really popular a couple years ago. After reading this book, though, I don't think I'm going to pick up Archer's Voice because this was a romance that was very much unbelievable. I didn't really enjoy this book, but you can't really tell by my annotation. This was my first time really annotating a book. And the process of it was fun, and I think if I didn't annotate this book, I would have DNF'd it because that's how uninvested I was in the story. I gave this 2.5 stars out of 5. So there was like little details of this book that I did appreciate, but the overarching book as a whole I did not enjoy. But there were little things that I can pick out that I can say that I did enjoy. So the title, I love whenever titles of books actually mean something to something in the story. I don't like the direct call out. So like if one of the characters like said more than words like in a quote, I would have found that pretty cringe, but the more than words part of the book is pretty relevant to the topic that's discussed in this romance. So here's my little annotation key. I wrote that I loved the dedication. I think the dedication is cute, and that is a callback to an important part of the book. So I have romance, quotes I heart, funny parts of the book, and then Callan, When I Get My Hands on You. I added that halfway through the book because Callan, who is the romantic lead in this book, made me so angry. And you can see there's 3 different parts that I annotated and read. I do not like Callan in this book. This book follows Jessica and Callan, who fall in love at a very early age, and then Callan mysteriously disappears. They're not so much in love, but they are friends, and then they kiss once, and then before she can get any follow-up on why they kissed, he just mysteriously disappears. She doesn't see him again until he becomes famous. He becomes a famous composer of... Callan becomes a famous composer of music that's like in movies, like dramatic movies, I guess. So she kind of follows him, and then they meet each other again for the first time since childhood one night in Paris. They both go separate paths again. Jess gets an interesting job. She works in Paris, but then she gets an interesting job translating ancient texts from Joan of Arc. And so then she has to leave Paris and go to this other town where the archives are, or where the dig site is, for work. She goes there, and then he has writer's block. He can't write his new album for like a movie deal or something, and so then he goes to the same small town, and then they find each other again, and then they start seeing each other. So then the cons of this book, it was a very simple plot line. It was very much insta-lovey. I know that they had history together, but the history was so bland that I didn't understand why whenever they see each other again after so many years, they just pick up right where they left off. But they didn't leave off anywhere significant. They kissed once after a couple years of being friends as children, and then they just kind of like instantly like fell into step with each other, and they were like very, very much insta-lovey. I know that you technically know each other from childhood, but people change so much, so you don't really know him, girl. There is something in this book that a lot of people hate, which is pregnancy trope. Yeah, I don't like that at all. Callan repeatedly referred to Jessica as like innocent and pure, and it weirded me out because it was so repetitive, and it was kind of like infantilizing her. Like, instead of treating her as an adult woman that you're romantically interested in, he was like, oh, she's just so sweet and innocent and pure, like a little girl. And I didn't like that at all. So Jessica opens up to Callan throughout the course of this book and talks about how she doesn't really trust men because her parents had a terrible marriage, and, you know, her dad was a chronic cheater, and then her mom was always constantly like begging for him to come back, and so she didn't want to be like her mother, and so she shared that with him. And then one night she does something to accidentally help someone betray Callan and embarrass him publicly, and for some reason he takes it out on her, even though he knows fully that it was not her fault because she didn't have all the information of what she does. And like any logical man would not blame Jessica, Callan for some reason blames Jessica. So then he goes and tries to cheat on her, and then while Jessica catches him in the act, instead of being angry like a logical person, she's like, no, you're better than this, don't do this, like don't do this to yourself. Yeah, so then before he slams the door in his face to sleep with this other woman, he goes, turning into your mother already? So that's where the annotation tabs, Callan, when I get my hands on you, came into play. Let's read the other parts where Callan made me angry. So then that's not good enough for him. So then they run into each other again. He's like developing like alcoholism for some reason, and then in the end of the book that's never talked about or treated, and they just go about their lives like it never happened. But he like goes on a really bad drinking bender and then finds her, insults her job, calls Joan of Arc stupid, she's nothing, insults her a bunch, and then starts talking about religion because she mentioned one time that she was Christian, she believed in God and like her thoughts on God, and then he starts insulting her religion. So just like he just keeps crossing all the lines that I would personally set for myself if I was Jessica. He just crosses all those lines, and then he goes off by himself. He heals his trauma with his like dad or something, and then he comes back, and then Jessica immediately forgives him after all of the terrible things that he did. And then in the last couple pages, she's like, oh, by the way, I'm pregnant. And then he's like, oh, well, that's good because we're in love. And so then that's how it ends. She immediately forgives him. I'm assuming they're getting married and then they're going to have a kid. I mean, the drama was interesting to read about. All the things that Callan did was entertaining, but it definitely turned me off of him, like, a lot. I absolutely hate this character. I would not recommend this book for anyone who actually wants to read a real romance, but if you just want to read about people being messy and making bad choices, then I would recommend More Than Words. After that, I picked up Magnolia Parks. I've been trying to read this on and off for a while. It's a rich girl named Magnolia and then her toxic ex-boyfriend slash best friend, BJ. It's like British Gossip Girl is what everyone calls it, and that kind of world was entertaining, but the main thing that pushes the plot forward is their like on again off again enemies to lovers type romance. They were best friends for years, they dated each other, they broke up because he cheated on her, and then they have this like toxic thing where they spend way too much time together even though she's not forgiving him, and he gets with people to make her angry, then she gets with other people to make him angry, and they get angry at each other, and then they immediately forgive each other, and then one of them immediately does something to hurt the other. I'm sorry, I did not find this entertaining at all. I found it entertaining for like maybe the first 2 to 3 times, but it was so repetitive and I only got halfway through the book. So after like 250 pages I just called it quits. I couldn't do it anymore. They were toxic, but in the like predictable kind of toxic, not the like interesting like page turning kind of way. Their friend group was just weird and super unbelievable, that like a bunch of guys who are all like 6 foot and super hot, they're all friends with one girl and all of them secretly like her. Yeah, it was really weird. It was not believable, it was not relatable. I don't really like Magnolia. I didn't like BJ either, so I didn't really care if they got together or not. I know a lot of people really like this book, but I didn't, so I DNF'd it. Those were my thoughts on Magnolia Parks. This was a 1 star for me. After that disappointing book, we had Heartless by Marissa Meyer. This was a book that I've been meaning to read for a while. It's the origin story of the Queen of Hearts. So whenever she was just a young girl, she has this thing with the king where her parents are pressuring her to marry the king. The king is obviously in love with her, but he's kind of just like a goofball. He's exactly like he is in the film. So obviously she doesn't really want to marry the king. She just wants to open up a bakery with her best friend. She's a baker. She likes making desserts. That's what makes her happy. And then one night she meets Jest, who is the king's new jester, or like Joker or court Joker, whatever that is. And so then slowly throughout the plot of the book, she falls in love with him. I liked the details in this book that really called back to small details in the world of Wonderland, so I could tell that she really respected her source material. I will say The drama that was happening outside of the romance was pretty confusing and didn't make much sense. I didn't really ship Jess and Catherine all that hard. You know, it was just kind of, it wasn't good, but it also wasn't bad. I wasn't shocked by the plot twist, and I wasn't really crying over this book the way that a lot of people were. You know, she wanted to be a baker. But I gave this book 3 stars. However, after that, things started to get good. I picked up the 3rd book in the Shatter Me series. It's called Ignite Me by Tahira Mafi. This book finally delivered on so many things that this series had been leading up to. It follows Juliet, who is a girl with a lethal touch. Basically, she's some sort of genetic mutant. They don't understand why she has this ability. Anyone who touches her skin experiences like crazy pain, and more often than not they die. So she has a lethal touch. So she's held in this facility in the 1st book. She gets kidnapped by Aaron Warner, and he plans to use her ability as a weapon, so obviously she doesn't like him. She's befriended by a soldier named Adam, who only has her best interest in mind and wants to get her out. That follows the 1st book. The 2nd book is they finally escape, they join a rebellion. That follows all that, but I can't really talk about all that without spoiling it. This picks up immediately after the plot twist at the end of book 2. There were a couple chapters that we just like stayed in the same spot and we were just having the same conversations over and over again, but everything outside of that was so good. I love Aaron Warner. It was so, I don't know what happened. The 1st book I hated Aaron, I loved Adam, and then just like overnight I completely switched. Hate Adam in this book. Adam is so annoying, but you know, we love Aaron. This book finally delivered on things that I was like waiting for to happen. The ending was a little rushed. They completed their goal within like 20 pages, I think. Yeah, but there's 3 more books in this series, so I'm a little confused with how the series continues, because it seems that seems almost wrapped up. It was very quickly wrapped up, very messily wrapped up, but it was concluded nonetheless. So I don't really know how this book continues, but there are 3 more in the series, not including all the novellas that she wrote. But outside of that, this was a really good book. I think I read it in like a day or maybe a day and a half. Very interesting read. I really enjoyed this. I would recommend it. This was my first 5 out of 5 stars for the month. We immediately followed that up with another 5 out of 5 stars. This is Blood and Honey, which is the 2nd book in the Serpent and Dove trilogy. This book was so good. It's 500 pages, but I genuinely finished it in one day. I was really impressed with myself, but I just could not put this book down. It was so good. I've heard some people complain about this book, that they say nothing happens. And to that I'd say, did we read the same book? I thought this was so interesting. It was so fast-paced. It does fall into the trope of like something big and revolutionary happens in the 1st book. The 2nd book is a little bit of a filler, and then the 3rd book leads to like the final battle. I will say I think enough happened in this book to keep you thoroughly entertained, compared to like other 2nd book fillers that happen in trilogies a lot. This follows Louise and Reed. Louise is a witch, and then Reed is a chasseur, which is a witch hunter in like 18th century France, which is what this is set in. The 1st book they had to marry each other because there was some like public event where he was trying to arrest her, I think, then they fell onto a stage, and then it looked like bad and inappropriate, and everyone was very confused, and he's like a chasseur, so he has to be like the symbol of propriety and properness and godliness and Christianness. And so to get out of that situation, they have to marry each other, and so then at this point Reed does not know that Louise is a witch. So the 1st book follows all of that drama, and then the 2nd book picks up right where we left off. Louise has her best friend Coco, short for Cosette, who is also a witch, and I love Louise and Reed's dynamic. I loved their romance. This was a romance that I actually truly believed in. Louise is such a strong character that it does lead to some conflicts between their personalities, but I did like the conflict. I did still find it interesting. I love the world of the witches that this author developed. I thought the world and the magic was really interesting and really well developed. The villain's amazing in this book. The villain is Louise's mother, not a nice lady. And then the plot twist at the very end really had me. It made me so mad I wanted to like throw my book. If you haven't read this book and you don't want it spoiled, skip to this timestamp, and if you have read this book, then you can keep watching this next part. Oh my god, Nicolina made me so angry at the end of this, where La Vision, however you pronounce it. I don't really pronounce them in my head because I know they're French. I'm gonna mispronounce it. But Coco's aunt, the leader of the Dame Rouges, she's revealed that she was actually working with Morgane instead of working with Louise. That was crazy. And then, so then she's like obviously trying to kidnap Louise, and she's like drugging her or whatever, and she's kidnapping her. In order to avoid them finding that out, they send Nicolina in disguise as Luis. And so in the last chapter, Reed's talking to all the other characters, and so then Louise comes in, she's got a big smile on her face, and she goes up and kisses Reed, and Reed doesn't suspect anything because he thinks it's just his wife, but it's not, it's Nicolina in disguise. And the whole book, Nicolina has been so into Reed and like flirting with him, and like being so obsessed with him and constantly like making comments to Louise, and Louise is getting angry. That made me so angry, so I'm really excited to pick up the third book, and I hope that they figure out that it's not actually Louise and that it's Nicolina pretty soon. Yeah, I don't know what she's gonna get up to with him, but I thought that was a really clever plot twist and a really clever way to get people to read her third book. So 5 out of 5 stars for this one. And then we immediately follow that up with a 1 star from my personal opinion of Violet Made of Thorns by Gina Chen. I really wanted to like this book. The main character of this book is Violet. She's a seer, so that means that she's some sort of magically gifted person who is able to see the future, and so then she works for the king, who she tries to like advise and see his future, and you know, that's just her thing. It was like a pretty okay basic concept. There's this weird thing where the seer before her made a prophecy that if the prince doesn't find his true love, then like the whole kingdom's in danger. So she inherits that kind of prophecy, so then the prince is cursed, and so then she has arguments with the prince because she's trying to get him married and just trying to get him so that people think that he's found his true love, so people stop panicking about this prophecy. And I can't tell if this magic in this book is supposed to set up to be believable or if it's supposed to be kind of like a scam, because she's constantly called a liar by the prince, and a lot of people don't believe her, and she's often lying. When she says that she's using her magic to see people's future, she's often lying, and then when she does actually see stuff, it's very, very vague. So I can't tell if she actually can't see the future or if she can and it's just weak. And I can't tell if we're supposed to actually respect the prophecies and believe what's happening in this book, because the prophecy just fully doesn't come true. Like, maybe he does find his true love, maybe he doesn't, I can't really tell. There was like a romance between the prince and Violet, but also kind of not. I could never tell where they were, because like with enemies to lovers, it's very clear. It's like they're enemies, they get closer, they respect each other, they fall in love. But for them, it was just kind of like constant tension, and also they never really fell in love, and it was just kind of constant hatred. I can't tell if this is a standalone. Like, everything about this book was so back and forth and vague that I can't even tell if it's like a standalone book or if there's going to be a second one, because it kind of seemed like there was going to be a second one. But also, like, the big thing that was pushing the plot forward was this curse that was put on the prince, and then they put like a timestamp on it, and that timestamp came and went. Nothing bad happened. So then in my head, I'd be like, oh, okay, so like the prophecy and the seers, they're just liars and we shouldn't respect them anymore. But then she says, yes, we do have to respect them. The villain was really weird. The villain wasn't scary at all. I don't understand her place in the book. Yeah. Also, the thing that weirded me out was her best friend was also best friends with the prince, Cyrus. What's her best friend's name? Oh, also she calls the prince Princey in this book, and that's not a good nickname. That's like not a good pet name, and I know it's supposed to be like a cute thing that only she does. I just found it kind of annoying. What is this guy's name? Oh, Dante. Dante and Cyrus have a weird relationship where they interact with each other. They're very much just friends. There's not a lot to their friendship. I didn't really find it super believable, but according to Violet, there's like rumors around the court that they're sleeping together. And Dante's obviously upset by this because everyone else thinks that he's only in the courts because Cyrus uses him as like a boyfriend. And Dante's obviously upset by this. Cyrus never talks about it, and I don't even know if he's aware of it. Violet talks about it a little bit, but no one ever does anything to be like, no, they're just friends. Like Violet and Dante, they're never accused of having any sort of sexual relationship, but there's always this rumor of a sexual relationship between Dante and Cyrus only when Cyrus isn't present. Every time that Cyrus and Dante interact, there is no sexual romantic chemistry whatsoever. And I don't understand why none of the characters who care about Dante would ever do anything to fight back against these rumors. And I don't even understand how the rumor would start, because if you see them interact, there's nothing there. I don't even believe them as friends, let alone as like partners that are like romantically or sexually involved at all. So that was just kind of a weird thing that was thrown in there for no reason, and it also was just pretty illogical because in the real world something would have come from that. where one of the characters would have been like, this is weird, stop making this up. Also, I don't even understand why anyone would even believe those rumors if you see the two characters interact. It's like stale bread. Yeah, I was glad when I was done with this book. 1 star out of 5. And then we finished up the month with Fourth Wing. I did a whole reading vlog, so if you want to know my thoughts more in depth, you can go watch that video. But I gave this a 4 to 5 stars. I loved the main character, Violet. I thought the world building was really interesting. I liked reading about dragons. I thought that I wouldn't, but I actually really did. I loved the setting. I loved the plot. I loved the magic. It was very, very high stakes. Very interesting. Like, I couldn't put the book down, like page turning. The only flaw is the romance for me. I didn't really enjoy the romance. I enjoyed the first part. I enjoyed the setup. Like, the author set up these two characters, Xaden and Violet, for such a good romance. I think she set it up really well, and then whenever she finally got the chance to actually build on it, I feel like she really fumbled. I personally didn't like the direction that the romance went, and then by the time that they finally like fully admitted to each other that they were in love, I didn't really believe it. But this book has really good plot twists. I did predict a few of them, but that's just because I personally am really good at predicting plot twists. Like M. Night Shyamalan movies, I can always predict the big plot twist that happens in his movies. I'm really good at that. I will say this is a little similar to Red Queen. I don't know if anyone's noticed that. Violet's hair color, like it's brown and then silver at the ends. That's the same exact thing with Mare in the Red Queen series. And then the plot twist at the end, the same exact thing happens in Red Queen, but it's such a hyper-specific detail and it's such a hyper-specific plot twist. I feel like it was directly taken from that book. I don't know if anyone else noticed that. Everything else about this book was really, really good. I can see it being turned into like a movie or a TV show or something like that. All that said, this was a 4 out of 5 stars. I would recommend you guys read it, and I'm definitely excited to read the second book in the series. And that was all the books that I read in the month of May. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you when I see you.